This is what happens when you have such great lunch. So everything starts late, and this is not going to be an exception. So are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. So now we are going to start the introduction to computational thinking to tweens. And it is my great honor to introduce Irene, who is going to be the moderator for the panel. She will introduce the three panelists. We will go for 40 minutes for panel discussion. Then we'll have 15 minutes or so for questions, and then we wrap it up at the end. And after this, there's going to be the next event. It's going to be in and out of class. So I don't want to do any further ado. Let's go for it.
Thank you, Juan. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves briefly, say a little bit about their program and the community they serve. So Tom, you're on.
Hey everyone, my name is Tom O'Connell. I'm the Interim Executive Director at Code Interactive. We're based in New York City, but we do lots of projects across the country. Professional development for teachers, everything from Scratch Junior up to CS principals. In the middle school space, for the tweens, most relevant to this chat, we do a lot of integration work with Scratch, web design, and we're deep partners with the New York City Department of Education, and they've done a lot of integration work. Most recently, we're building out a really cool 6 through 8 unit that'll be implemented across a ton of schools in New York City. So really exciting work, always looking for how do we engage these tweens?
Hi, I'm Smita Kolhatkar. I'm right here in the Bay Area. Currently, I'm the Director of Technology and Innovation at Gideon Hausner Jewish Day School, which is a private K-8 independent K-8 school. Prior to this, I was with Palo Alto Unified District for like 11 years. I work with teach students, teachers, other educators, with combining computer science, maker spaces, a wide variety of those things, as well as one of the organizers of what is called as EdCamp SV Make, which is an EdCamp that is focused solely on making, and work actively at the Computer History Museum and a few other, and SVQ board, which is like the tech integration. Yep.
I have my own. Hi, I'm Aimee Quiet. I am the National Outreach Director for Techgirlz, and Techgirlz with a Z on the end. What we do, our goal is to inspire middle school girls to continue to explore the possibilities of technology. And the idea is to impact their future careers. And we do this by providing free workshop materials for anybody anywhere to use to run a tech workshop. We're based in Philadelphia, but we are all over the country and all over the world, actually.
Fantastic. So the first question I had for you was about social-emotional development in tweens, and they're, it's a time where they're moving from kind of their family to their school and having peers as their larger community. So the question I had for you was, how do you, through your programs, support their identity formation and social-emotional development?
I'll start. As I mentioned, we work with girls, and there's a lot of research and studies that show that there's a lot of disconnect between the boys and the girls in that middle school age. So that's partly why our programming is focused on the girls and getting them into their peer groups where they feel most comfortable. They're able to relax and open up. They don't have to worry about, if that boy's cute over there or not, and if he's noticing her. But it really does help them to open up and be confident to explore, which is very important.
Yes.
So what I've found is that around probably 4th grade is when you see like this distinct difference in the genders, where the girls start being like, oh, this is not cool. And a lot depends on what they were introduced to prior to then, and then that also determines their path down beyond, into middle school. So a lot depends upon that. The current group of 6th graders we have were not introduced to CS or related concepts in the past couple of years. For the CS elective, there was one girl, and then she dropped out. So I am pushing to get different classes for the genders maybe next year, so that to see, with 2 separate teachers, I said I'm happy to work around my schedule and see how I would work with the girls. So they have a woman there as an example and see how they do that. And also opening up the maker space to have them do things makes a difference, because like you were saying, like Aimee was saying, the whole having the expression to find themselves, they're more likely to find things that they're more comfortable with, even in this mixed setting in a makerspace versus like just a CS elective class.
Yeah, similarly, a lot of our programs and curricula revolve around, first, students relating their own lives to computing, and making sure that they can really put themselves in whatever projects and artifacts they're creating. And second, the theme of tech with purpose, finding causes that they care about, and in their communities especially, and centering a lot of projects around those. And those are two themes that we center most of our projects around. And we do a lot of work with measurement of social emotional learning in the absence of assessment, which we're comfortable with right now. In K-8, we measure social emotional learning growth with our students with a group of other nonprofits in New York City, and we've seen statistically significant growth in our students' sense of belonging, which we attribute to them feeling more comfortable between the beginning and end of year with a full year of computing, and their self-reported confidence with problem solving, which we're like, hey, that's what we would ideally like to see in a computing class going up. And the fact that we can kind of measure that and compare different nonprofit strategies has been really helpful for us.
Excellent. Are there specific ways that you can help them make their identity as computational thinkers more concrete? Are there concrete ways to, I guess I want to say cement, but that sounds funny, to cement their identities as computational thinkers? Do they have to demonstrate their project before a community, or is it through the number of projects that they engage in?
Yeah, I mean, in a full year of computing, they're creating these artifacts and presenting them to their class. We've done, there are a couple of really good examples in New York City, especially of students being able to present in front of larger groups of students. So the nonprofit we're merging with, Mouse, has run for 10 years this big event called Emoticon, and they are just knocking it out of the park with that, like presenting student work and having the East Initiative in Arkansas also has an amazing conference that's entirely student run, that students are really proud of the displays that they create and the projects that they're working on all year. So having that student agency and student projects out there for the community, I think that's the most powerful to cement their sense of being a computational thinker.
Yeah, definitely going, again, echoing what Tom said about, community projects makes a huge difference. It boosts their self-esteem, it boosts their confidence, it gives them motivation to do more. They see someone else doing it, they do it. But I also, when I think of computational thinking and we think about the different skills we want to teach the students, where we want them to take risks, we want them to persevere, we want them to try new things they haven't tried before, kind of step outside their comfort zone and persevere and think of different problem-solving strategies. There are different ways we would introduce it with respect to just different difficult activities. So like for instance, there's this one very popular activity which is like a chainmail ball. I don't know if you guys have seen any of those these are little rings, okay? And they're sold on a website called the Lord Ring or Ringmaster or something like that, okay? And it's very cool. They're just little things that you can actually make jewelry. But what they're doing is they have to use pliers to, open them and then put them in and then link them together, and they make these really complex chainmail balls. In fact, I got so hooked on to watching them that one of the first graders actually taught me how to make it. So I made my first ball like 3 weeks ago. But things like that, where we're always looking for different activities where that'll still have all the thinking and then boost their confidence.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to both of the responses. In our programming, we base a lot of it on projects and things that the girls can relate to in their everyday lives. So they are using apps. Well, let's talk about how you design a mobile app for your users and what's involved in that. And from jewelry design to really just everything, podcasting, just all across the board of things that they can relate to, that they see, and then being able to kind of cement that in of okay, so now when I see this app, I know what went into making this happen. I can do it, and I also know a professional now that does this every day. So it's kind of like a holistic idea for them.
Nice. So what are reasonable expectations to have of tween CT understanding? And more specifically, I know that in the projects I work with, sometimes students have a hard time developing their scientific question, for example, or coming up with that project. So what are reasonable expectations of CT overall, and then in the space of coming up with their own project design?
I think Tom has like the details of it. I think just overall, for us, it's kind of taking this big picture, big problem, breaking it down into smaller, manageable pieces, and being able to apply that in almost any situation in life. So I think that's kind of my hippie version of it.
Well, I was a science and computer science teacher, and even in science, you teach the scientific method every single year. You have to reinforce these problem-solving skills and the problem-solving process every single year. And middle school, I mean, it's a kind of pivotal time before students are getting into maybe a more stressful science and computer science life. Especially like AP Computer Science principles has a much faster pace. Like they're going to need a lot more reinforcement, and there's a lot more energy for them to kind of explore their interests in that middle school science arena and have cross-curricular opportunities. So I think it's that pivotal time when you can do a lot more problem solving. Independence, I think they need. It's a weird group, right? The tweens. How much scaffold, you need to be prepared to scaffold, but also let them kind of do their own thing too. So it's maybe the most scaffolding you'll do that middle school years.
So I think to add to that, I'd just say working on the, if you're familiar with Carol Dweck's fixed versus growth mindset, being, working on their growth mindset because they get so fixated on doing something in a particular way only. So that is a huge area of focus to make sure they realize they have to be flexible with respect to the problems they work on.
Great. What about evidence of CT learning? Do you have evidence other than, you have projects, right? What other sorts of evidence do you collect or are you interested in?
Sure. Oh yeah, we do a ton of artifact work, and it really depends on the curriculum, but Scratch projects are a ton of fun for kids to show off and be able to collect that evidence of what they've done. It's not so much the result of what they create, but we really care about them being able to explain their process of how they developed that Scratch project and the problem-solving process that they went through to go through the whole thing,
Got it.
right? So we want them to, especially in middle school, and teachers love when we can throw in some literacy in there as well. So we steal a lot of journaling from both Scratch Creative Computing has a great journaling methodology. Exploring Computer Science does a lot of journaling. You sometimes have to force kids a little bit, but they can draw, they can do whatever. They need to talk about their process though.
I'd say, yes, process is very important, and the fact that they need to be able to explain what they have done. It's not so much, the emphasis is more on the process, not so much the product. And that they realize that as they work through this, it's okay to make a mistake. Like, what did Cynthia say yesterday about the mistake? She said, referring back to, it's good to make a mistake, basically, and to learn from that. I mean, not glorify the mistake, but learn from it and move on and, go on and focusing on that process where the different SEL skills they've, worked on, all of that together, I'd say, makes up the assessment, the evaluation.
I see.
Yeah, ours is a little bit different since we're not in the schools, and we have these kind of one-off workshops. And again, the idea is to get the girls excited about it. We're not trying to make them proficient in anything, but we're hoping that between the 52 topics that we have, something grabs their attention, and it does, But we do like to have them be able to walk away with something to show off to friends, to family members. In some cases, we have a 3D jewelry design where they get to make a bracelet and they can have it printed. So there are a lot of different projects where they can actually show and tell, if you will. And another thing, kind of looking into the future for our girls, we like them to come back when they've aged out and they teach. They create curriculum for us. So we're really trying to push them to the next level. And I think that moment when you go from student to teacher is a great moment where you kind of cement in like, okay, I've done this, and here's proof that this works.
Wonderful.
I'll just add one more thing. Often they like to work in groups or teams, especially at that age, and I think sometimes in those situations, trying to make sure that the one who is actually leading the group and is not the only one making all the decisions and is not the only one who has a say in everything that's taking place, and forgetting the ones who are just probably piggybacking in some cases, but making sure that everybody really has put in their, contributed their effort and is actually learning, or if they're not, then try and find out what the problem is.
I want to point out my new friend Emily in the audience. ETR is doing a cool project on pair programming, and I think that's commonly used, probably most commonly used in middle school.
It is, yeah, a very common strategy.
Yeah, and they're going to put out the real talk about some of their research behind pair programming, because I think a lot of teachers do rely on that to have students discuss their process. So we're still waiting.
For that podcast.
Of course, yeah. Look out for.
We'll get out within the year, but yeah, helping teachers scaffold that because it is a complicated scenario depending on outcomes, and there's a lot of different avenues to do it. So.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So getting back to having returning girls who've aged out come back in, Bandura's self-efficacy framework has an element of increasing self-efficacy through seeing others like myself succeed. And I wanted to know about ways that works in your programs.
I'll take this one. So a lot of the people that are running our workshops, they're women that are in the fields that they're teaching, typically. We do have a bunch of really great male allies. I don't want to discount them, but for the women that are leading them, the girls get to look up to them.
Yeah.
And that can be from, it's interesting because, I talk to new volunteers, they might say, oh, I'm just an old lady, they don't want to hear from me, but the girls are really intrigued and they're excited to hear that, this career that they didn't really think about exists. Mm-hmm. And here's a woman that's doing it, so I can do it too. Also when you look at like a high schooler that maybe has aged out and she's still in school, but think how cool high schoolers were when you were in middle school, and that's another great kind of pairing with that. And they have a lot of programs that in clubs in the high school that will help them facilitate running workshops regularly for the middle school girls. So it's really a nice nice package to present to a school district if they have the ability to do that.
So on an informal basis, not as regularly, but what I've worked in the past is using high school students to come and work with middle or elementary school students, and middle schoolers collaborating with each other, and that has worked very well too. I think kids just love working with each other from different students versus having adults in there. So it really adds a really nice touch when we manage to get that going.
And when you can get professionals to come to your classroom, which is the best case scenario, especially professionals who look like our students, there's resources like Made with Code has wonderful videos of diverse professionals in diverse fields that students might not think of as having to do with computing. So we try to make sure that those are the main videos that teachers might be showing about careers in classrooms.
Mm-hmm. So tweens are breaking away from the family in some sense and building new friendships. To what extent do you still have parents as partners in supporting students as computational thinkers? Can parents come into the program, or is it really not the space to include them?
Parents are always welcome. Whenever they, even though they want to break away, it's cool not to have the parents, but it's not like, they're going to be mean to them when they come. And it's always nice to have them. It's good to have that partnership because there's so much expertise that the parents can provide to us, especially in this area. And I think it's a great idea to leverage them. Of course, we have to set the boundaries in terms of, you're coming for all the kids, not yours, and how the help should be, in what form. It's like ask questions, not like tell them. But yeah, I absolutely love engaging with the parents on helping us with this.
I just think of it as from an advocacy perspective too. Like we're still getting schools to get these CS programs off the ground and convince principals that they're in demand. So I always think of the disconnect between parents actually do want these computing programs at schools. The Google Gallup survey told us that over 90% of parents want computing programs for their students. Principals don't think that demand is there. So maybe, and I don't deal as much with parent engagement, but maybe having parents more involved on that end with things like Family Code Night could show that real demand.
Yes.
We do a lot of work trying to engage parents, and our programming not being in school, parents have to know about us to get their children there, and our true customer would be the girls, but the parents, we have to get to them first. So we do a lot of work trying to get the word out to parents. We welcome them to come at the end to check out what their child has done, but we do find that if mom's in the room, it's a little distracting, and I think naturally the girls they don't feel as comfortable to really be themselves because they're they're trying to figure that out, and they might act a little differently when they're around their friends and then when they're around mom. So we want them to really relax and get into it. But we do have some parents that make amazing volunteers, and their daughters become volunteers as well. And it's there's more than one kind of scenario that fits, but definitely need to have the parent involvement and buy-in. And we do surveys with the girls, and they definitely overwhelmingly say that they wish their parents were more involved in their in their learning.
Great. So it sounds like your programs are well developed and honed, but it took a while to get there probably. So I'd love to hear your advice on what not to do when engaging tweens and CT.
Don't talk to them like they're babies. They really hate that. I have a bubbly personality, so when I start off a workshop, I'm like, hey, and I see the girls looking at me like, really? But I would do that with adults too. But they very much want to be treated like they are older than they are, because they're starting to feel like they're older than they are. And then also, don't discount that they are amazing problem solvers, and you get some great ideas. I've worked with youth hackathons in the past. And, oh my gosh, some of these ideas these kids come up with, it makes me feel like I missed something somewhere. But they're really, really bright, and just kind of tap into that. So don't not tap into that, I guess is my what not to do.
Got it.
So they love being independent, like and Aimee touched upon some of that, but they can't be independent without some scaffolding. And Tom had talked a little bit about the scaffolding earlier. So they do need that. It's like the hot glue guns in the makerspace, okay? The little ones don't burn their fingers, but the 7th graders do. There was one boy with 8 burnt fingers 2 weeks ago. I'm like, how did you do this? And then I see this girl coming up to me and telling me, I was asked to tell you that I just burnt my finger. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? She's already put the cold water. So how did you burn it? Well, I had the glue pad, and I just touched the gun to see if, it was hot. Then I find out, well, no one actually told them how what the expectation should be. So yes, they are independent, but at the same time, for every task, they have to be given certain boundaries and expectations, and no assumptions, even if they are at that age, and even if they feel, don't talk to them like babies, but make sure you're clear and explicit in everything that's said to them in an adult way, so they feel like, yes, you're treating them like older than they are.
So tweens are really bouncy. They're short attention spans. They don't want to hear you lecture in front of a class. So I think that a lot of our curricula and our best practices that we try to instill in our beginning CS educators especially revolve around inquiry and project-based learning, right? That's still tough for beginning CS educators to grasp and implement really well. But if we tell them, it fits with kids' personalities in middle school. If you're bouncy, you want to play around with things. You want to get messy. You want to break things or burn your hands for some reason and learn from that. So getting teachers to find that motivation to say like, oh, this style of learning actually fits my kids' personalities at the middle school level. And I think that maybe that'll, I'm going to start telling teachers that. It'll, yeah, because it's tough to get teachers to commit to inquiry when they're just starting to teach a new subject area.
So I just wanted to add a do to the don'ts, which is they are at a very social age. And, along with the inquiry and minimal direct instruction, you want to give them a chance to be social in their work. So they get to be social, but they are talking about work as they go on. I mean, of course, you'd need to check in to make sure they're not talking about their date tonight or something. But, yeah, I think it's really important to give them that social outlet.
Super. Well, thank you. And at this point, I'd love to turn it over to the audience for questions. Do you want me to run?
Oh yeah, we have. We're giving one of our mics to the audience. There we go.
So I have,
We need one.
I've just started working with a middle school, trying to integrate computational thinking into their science and math classes. And we've had completely different teachers, you know, for reception. And we sort of were trying to do just-in-time PD, like in their planning period, like right before we started to do something. And we tried to design the modules that we gave them with like a few days of unplugged, you know, things to do in the classroom to kind of get ready to what we were going to do on the computer, and then little programs to write to simulate like epidemics and invasive species. So we're doing like modeling and simulation. And some of the teachers are like, yes, this is awesome. And some, like, I can tell their face like shuts down, right? Like when you're talking, and we're not doing a lot of hands-on with them. And I think that the implementation for computational thinking in these middle school classes is going to hinge on whether those teachers buy in or not. And we've also, you know, we observe the classrooms after they're doing it, and sometimes the kids are like writing a little program, and they're not very long what they have to do. But with this sort of minimal PD, the teachers are like, you know, if someone's like, hey, what do I do? And the teacher's like, if your program doesn't look like mine, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And like, that's the absolute opposite. So we're trying to skate that boundary between like too much PD, how do we get the buy-in? How do we promote the inquiry? Do you have any comments on sort of how we might do a better job with some of the people, and how do you get the naysayers on board, kind of stuff?
I can tell you from my experience with Project GUDS, having the teachers go through the process of, you know, making the models, experimenting with them, modifying them, taking them apart, right? That giving them the student experience has helped break some of the fear. But then also showing them the value in scientific inquiry, you know, what kinds of questions you can ask and answer using a model. So yeah, there are two camps, some that don't see the science and others that are kind of frightened of the computing. And you have to offer something for each of those.
We've done a co-design process with a lot of teachers in our unit professional development with the New York City DOE. And you know, we've had teachers from history, science, English, all the subject areas, kind of being the experts in their own fields, bring in that knowledge, and then we're bringing in the computational thinking knowledge, and kind of giving them the tools to integrate. So when there's choice in what like unit they're putting it into and what subject they're putting it into, we found a little bit more confidence, and they liked at least that part of the professional development. But I agree, we did go out and coach this time around as well, and we found mixed results. It's very tough. So they definitely need, and we had 4 or 5 days with them, so a lot more PD time.
So, thank you. So given the age of the students and given the fundamental ideas from computational thinking, in your experience doing it, what has been the most difficult concept of computational thinking for the students to get, and the easiest one?
I don't know about the most difficult, but one of the harder concepts is seeing the other perspective, another point of view, another way of solving it. Sometimes, again, goes back to that fixed growth mindset where they see it one way and it's really hard for the kids to see it the other way. It takes a while to get that through.
That is not specific to computational thinking, right? So if there is anything in particular in computational thinking that you think for that age has been more difficult for them to understand?
I hope this answers your question. But I find that they are afraid to fail. So, you know, they once they hit a roadblock, instead of going back and saying, okay, well, let me try the next step or kind of pivot what I'm doing, they tend to shut down.
I'm remembering at the beginning of this panel when we didn't pause to define computational thinking either. So I think of computational thinking, and maybe y'all might like to add to this, but as the problem-solving process that we're using to teach them computation, and making sure that as I mentioned before, like the problem-solving process needs to be constantly developed with students, and this is when I really do see like the most mixed kind of abilities with students. So I think it's just hardest for teachers to be able to cater to all those groups. Like some students might need some more specific help than others. I don't know.
So yes, computational thinking in my mind would be that, and like I mentioned earlier, in order to problem solve, then all of the other skills that you need to problem solve, which is you want to persevere, you want to make sure you don't have you're looking at different problem solving strategies, you are able to break down, decompose the problem, you're able to persevere through it, take risks, all of those things together. Think deeply about a problem, you see the ramifications, and all of those together would make it. And I know we have a lot of computational thinking related people working in the field in the audience, and feel free to add to whatever we're saying here in terms of what your experiences have been too, because we have a lot of experts in here.
It's coming.
So my question is this. If I'm a sixth grader, I ask you, over in the makerspace, they told us to use design thinking. And here in computer science class, you're telling me to use computational thinking. What's the difference, and how do they work together?
So, it is a very good question. In a student's mind, a sixth grader's mind, yes, it would be two distinct things because these are two distinct terminologies, even though in an adult's mind, it's like, oh, this is all related. Why are you asking me this, right? But yes, in their mind, it is different. But then when you look at design thinking, it is resolving, it starts with, what do you want to design? Why do you want to design it? It's because you have a problem, and you're trying to solve the problem. And that's exactly what computational thinking is, which is you are trying to figure out how to solve a problem. And so that's basically how I would explain it to the sixth grader, saying that they have the same objective, which is solving a problem. And you can use computational thinking strategies to solve this design thinking problem.
I would say at the middle school level, I'm not giving you a test on this. Doesn't matter if you confuse the two. I think that we have the luxury of getting kids to, if they're explaining their process, I think I would give them a good thumbs up, whether it were a design thinking prompt or a computational thinking prompt, because I think they are very interrelated.
I think what I know of design thinking, which is somewhat vague, I must admit, there's an element of the client or the person who's the end user of whatever it is you're creating. So there's that awareness of other people using your artifact or your tool.
Yeah, so Mouse has a Design with Purpose course with the client is individuals with disabilities. So students are given that as their challenge for design thinking course. But I think you could be solving that with a computational solution potentially. So yeah, depending on what kids choose to do.
Okay, I'm over here with the mic. I guess I would just add to that is that design thinking doesn't have to end up with a computational thinking component at all. You could be designing anything, a chair.
Right.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with computational thinking. But my question has to do with, because we're trying to do this, you made the comment that you want them to be solving a problem that's personal to them or to their community. How do you get those ideas extracted from the kids? Are they coming up with those problems, and what kind of process do you use for them to extract ideas of, brainstorm ideas of what could they solve or help?
We have one workshop in particular where the girls are coming up with an app idea, and they're working through creating it. But we start off by asking them, what is something that you would like to see an app for that you have never seen? Or what is something that you use that you know could be better? So that way they're thinking about, like, you wake up in the morning, there should be an app for that, you know, that kind of thing. A lot of times the girls will come up with something related to school. There's a lot of homework involved things. They're very worried about their homework. But you know, depending on whatever their interests are, I've seen all over the board. But we just kind of really give them the just kind of the free space to think about what they want to work on, what they'd like to see. But then they also have them working in groups, so they help prompt each other. So somebody might bring up, oh, well, you know, I really like music, but I don't like the way this does that, you know, and so somebody else might bring up something else, and the next thing you know, they've come up with this really great idea together. I know that's not something that's really helping the community, and we do try to push, you know, it's kind of like, you know, what could you do to help your community? You know, and it really just kind of depends on the audience that you have. So, you know, some kids are coming from a rough background, and they might have some real problems that they'd like to work on, where some other students might just, they just want a better music app.
Mm-hmm.
So the 7th graders actually work on something towards that end, and they interview everyone in the community. Like, they interview the parents, maybe grandparents, neighbors, younger students, everybody, and that's how they narrow it. Because often students don't necessarily know where to start with. You kind of have to guide them, and then, of course, the teachers also will guide them towards, you know, with their interests in mind, what are some of the areas where they would like to help. So that's how we would go about it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of really cool example projects and lessons. Exploring Computer Science, again, has a really cool data collection, a couple of really cool data collection lessons. One is around communication methods. So like if you're breaking up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, would you text, call, or email? Like there's a lot of different ways of thinking about personal data and the personal data that we give out. I think that I've seen a lot of surveys that students have done where like you pass the survey around the class and everybody takes it and then you organize your data. But with community things, we have done like those professional product manager brainstormy activities with Post-it notes. Kids love writing on Post-it notes and putting all their ideas down. And I tell them to complain. Like, you love to complain to me about everything. Now's your chance to complain and write it down, and then think of a computational solution to what you're complaining about. So, but yeah, lots of things about school. Or me. That's it. Or their teachers. Too much homework.
In the after-school setting, we had used themes. So one theme was Contagion, and showed them how to model simple spread of something. And then they interpret that. You know, is it a rumor, gossip? Is it a hairstyle? Is it, you know, what else spreads like a disease? So at that point, given an example, they can customize it. But we don't leave it wide open. So another theme was pollution, and some, you know, thought of light pollution, sound pollution, or littering. So we try to scaffold it.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Christina Cantrell from the National Writing Project, and we're a group of educators who work on writing across disciplines and grade levels. So Tom, I noticed your comment about your journaling, right? And I would love to hear a little bit more about that, because I mean, you know, I understand there might be sort of disciplinary connections trying to be made, but I can also think that there might be really rich ways that computer scientists use writing and journaling and composing in their practices that could be really sort of thought about and shared with the students and modeled, and the way you work with artifacts anyway. I was just thinking about how there could be a real rich space in there. Wondering if you would talk about that, or anybody else in the room.
Sure, and I'll talk about the two types of journaling, especially, so Scratch Creative Computing, more focused on K-8, has that more like creative journaling prompt where a lot of our teachers use Google Sheets for their journaling, and then kids can grab in pictures from the internet, or they can write about the project that they created or the process that they used to create it. So it's much more of like an open creative writing space. Some of them are creating like poetry about something that they created that day. And then Exploring Computer Science does more, encourages more of the paper journaling. And I know a lot of Exploring Computer Science teachers that we've trained that try to make it a conversation as well between, and they'll do like completion grades for their journals, or they'll write back to their students and try to get them to, it's a conversation typically about like a long-term project that they might be working on, or a process that they're working on all semester. So it's a chance for kids to have like more of a casual writing space than in an English classroom. So I think having that as a part of their process is very powerful. Y'all use journal? Different. One is when they document their code, because it's a must that the students must document their code, especially in middle school. And they are writing, and then, we're modeling to show them what is expected. So that's a complete expectation. And then the second being a reflection of the projects as they finish. That's where writing would come in.
So we definitely have the students documenting their code when they're working with code. But there's no official journaling that happens, about the process that they went through. We do have them talk about it. So at the end, they present their project. This is what we came up with. This is what we did. Okay, so what's 2.0 look like? And what would you have done differently if you could start over from scratch? So they can kind of reflect on that. And a lot of times they will end up working on it after they leave, and then show like, oh, this is what I did, because I realized that this could have been done a little bit differently and a little bit better.
We just introduced an Exploring Computer Science digital portfolios, where the students at the end actually do a combination of the things you described of documenting code, talking about their challenges and their identities, and the journaling questions, which are already part of Exploring Computer Science. They are explicitly done so that the students at the end of the project have a documentation of their process also.
Nice.
At the end you often forget about some of your challenges. I mean, you're thankful that you're done it all.
Yasmin, is that part of an existing tool, or how would you get, how do you access it?
It's part of the electronic textile unit, which we're just piloting with 600 students in LAUSD. And we will release this summer the curriculum where we describe the activities, the rubric for the portfolios, and how they're done. And I want to point out that in CS principles, communication is actually a key factor. So this ability to talk about code, to talk about or write about the process kind of presents a really great stepping stone for that.
Nice.
So introducing computational thinking to tweens, do you think that the tween age is the best time to introduce computational thinking, or do you feel like it should come before that? And if you do think that it should come before that, what is the number one computational thinking component that you feel like would be awesome for students entering their tweens to know?
I want to start by saying yes, and then I'm going to pass.
So yes is a definite. Younger the better, especially 5 when they are, I won't say fearless, because, like if you heard Emily's talk this morning in her keynote, she said, well, fearless, there's always some element of fear. It's a matter of, it's eliminating that little fear. And I'd say, if they had a really hard problem at hand, giving them, teaching them not to say, I can't. That when they see something that seems unsurmountable, to making sure you're telling them that everything is possible. Because then it doesn't matter what it is, they know it's possible and they will tackle it as they go along. It has to be ingrained in them right then.
Yeah, and especially having that perseverance with computational challenges at a much younger age. Student identities are formed very early, especially around gender biases against themselves. If you ask like first and second graders to draw what does a computer scientist look like, still at those ages, they're getting these preconceived notions that it might not be me, right? So having them experience computation in a really positive way through play at very early ages. There's a ton of toys out there that are super awesome. I bet you can buy many of them by talking to people at this conference. So we're given a lot of really cool, and Diane has all of them under her desk too. Yeah.
And I have a locked cabinet you haven't seen.
Oh, nice. So yeah, I mean, I think
Mark has many toys.
Yeah.
But the toys, they fill more than one need, right?
Yeah.
Because it's true that they're like super engaging, and they give us new ways to use the same ideas. But they also are manipulative. Yes. And I am not ready to say that just because they're tweens, they have let go of the need to touch new ideas. So I think they're powerful in both ways, and we use them obviously in early childhood also, but I don't give up on them for, yeah, that's my thinking.
Toys are fun, but also think of like chores. Clean your room, and anytime I ask my kids to clean their room, I can't, it's too messy, there's too much. But when you break down that problem into smaller pieces, we're just going to do the laundry first, and then we're going to get the toys out of the way, that kind of thing. It really helps. And so I always say that the chores I'm just teaching them. I'm not making them do work.
So, do you think decomposition would be a key factor for students to know prior to entering? I know growth mindset is there, but it's related to computational thinking, but I was thinking more those computational thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, and I had a follow-up on that. Do you use the terms automation, abstraction, analysis with students as tweens, or is that not necessary?
We probably do not. I can't speak for all of our volunteers, but our program's very much designed to kind of not trick the girls, but we don't want to drop in words that are going to scare them. Even computational thinking sounds scary, to a tween and even younger. So I would say no, not us. Okay.
So the terms abstraction and automation, yes, but computational thinking, no, because again, I'm going to, yes, because that would be like, what is that? Like, that's too hard. Or it just sounds like jargon to them most of the time. So, yeah.
I see.
we do use the terms, yes. They should be normal to us by now. Yeah.
I see.
Walk around saying, I'm going to decompose
Yeah.
this problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to
Yes.
do some loops.
It's
while
if
I
you
do it.
introduce
And
it
here's
to
our
algorithm for the
algorithm.
fire drill.
There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, my
Last
question.
question, sorry.
Great. My question was, if you could buy a toy, and only one toy, to give out to a bunch of teachers that were coming to PD this summer, I have the situation, and it would be middle and high school teachers, what would you buy? But before you answer, I want to say, I have an 8-year-old, and he's already using these words, so go ahead and use them.
Yeah.
Because my 8-year-old is going to come run over students that haven't heard them, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's not because I'm telling them to him, he's picking them up.
Oh, interesting.
So all the schools, like any school that has even a little, like the kids are picking it up.
Huh.
It's like,
Good to know.
algorithm this, blah, blah, blah. So just use the two terms. Yes, what toy?
So, middle or high school, right?
Middle school, high school, either one.
So either the Q robot or hummingbird.
Why?
Mark, why? Because a Q really has hit upon the whole tween mindset in terms of how they function, and that's how they've built their whole like personas and all of the different things that go with it, and they can program them with phones as well. And the hummingbird, just because if there are students who have programmed at length for years, then they have something more challenging where they build the robot and then they program it. Mark, would you have another recommendation?
Well, one thing that's very inexpensive and pretty exciting right now, if you haven't played with a BBC microbit.
Yeah, the microbit, yes. Yes.
I got finished for Fifth Playground Express.
But with the microbit, you would have to get a few more accessories for a longer project.
Okay. With that, we need to end. I'm sorry. If you can carry on, maybe after we clear.
So thank you very
Uh-huh.
much. The next panel is at 3:35, I believe. Let me check. It is at 3:35. It's going to be in and out of school, in and out of class, right here, 3:35. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.